Hey guys, TGKS Productions. For this GTN Live video, we're going to be doing a buying, customization, and review, as well as a short showcase for the Dinka Veto Modern. So this vehicle is one of the drip feed vehicles from the Chiropractor Heist DLC, and it can be purchased from the San Andreas, or Southern San Andreas Super Autos website. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do here. We're going to go ahead and purchase this vehicle. It retails for $995,000. Let's go ahead and take a look at this vehicle, and then we're also going to read the caption here. So you think you're worthy of the Veto Modern? You better be. This vehicle is so sophisticated, so sleek, so moderately powerful that it's road legal. We think. We haven't verified that yet. Alright, so there's the caption. Let's go ahead and purchase this vehicle, do a pre-customized test drive, and then get into the customization after that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pre-custom look of the Dinka Veto Modern. Now, this is based off of a pretty modern go-kart. Really not, I would say, any specific model. I wasn't really able to come up with any specific model that this go-kart was based off of. Also, with the remote functions here, just like the Veto Classic, really the only thing you can do is turn the engine on and then control the radio or the radio station you're listening to. That's it. Obviously, there's no doors, trunk, hood, or any lights on this vehicle that you can control. So that should be expected. You also notice this vehicle is in the sports car class, just like the Dinka Veto Classic. So I wouldn't be shocked at that at this point. I was a little bit surprised when I saw the Veto Classic to be in the sports class, but if that's going to be in the sports car class, obviously the modern version of that vehicle would probably be in the sports class also. But I'm really, to be honest, this first test drive here, I'm not really going to comment too much on, because a little bit later in this video, I'm going to do like a brief comparison between the Dinka Veto Modern and the Dinka Veto Classic. For the most part, the handling is similar, but there are some differences, and I'm going to highlight those differences, at least that I was able to uncover a little bit later in this video. Nothing too in-depth. It's not like an in-depth comparison, but it'll give you a little bit idea of the handling of this vehicle, and then as well as comparing it to the Dinka Veto Classic, or the classic version of this vehicle. So that's really all I'll say at this point. We're going to go ahead and check out the customization, do a short showcase after that, and then do our brief comparison between the Dinka Veto Classic and this vehicle, the Dinka Veto Modern. So let's go ahead and check out the customization for the Dinka Veto Modern. As always, I'll just highlight a few things here. I'm not going to be talking for the entirety of the customization here, and of course, feel free to check out its entirety if you so choose. But the couple things I'll highlight here, and probably I would say what a lot of players are interested in, is how does the customization for the Dinka Veto Modern, which is the vehicle we're customizing here, compare to the Dinka Veto Classic, which is really the other version of this vehicle. There are really two main differences in the customization between the Dinka Veto Modern and the Dinka Veto Classic. The first main difference is, with the Dinka Veto Classic, there is a front shield option that you can add to that vehicle, as well as a number of different customization options for that front shield. Whereas with the Dinka Veto Modern, it does sort of have this stock front shield, as you could see there, but there's no other options for it in the mod shop. If you go to a mod shop, you're not going to be able to change that at all. So that's really the first main difference. The second main difference is that the Dinka Veto Modern has over twice the amount of liveries available for it than the Dinka Veto Classic does. So again, the Dinka Veto Classic has some front shield options which the Dinka Veto Modern doesn't have, and then the Dinka Veto Modern has over twice the amount of liveries available to it than the Dinka Veto Classic does. That is really only two main differences for the customization options between the Dinka Veto Classic and the Dinka Veto Modern. Everything else is almost, pretty much exactly identical as far as the other customization options are concerned. Even like the color options, there's a primary color option, secondary color option, as well as a trim color option for both of these vehicles, and both of them, I would say the colors operate pretty much the same way there. So yeah, all the other customization for the most part is identical. This vehicle also comes stock with bulletproof tires, just like the Dinka Veto Classic does.
How many
And then
cars you
also
got in
there's
this
really
garage
no other
again?
tire options you can add to this vehicle. This vehicle does have unique tires to it. So that is really all I'll say for the customization. That's really about it. That's everything I have to say. Those are pretty much the main differences between the two, and really I'd say everything this vehicle has to offer. Obviously, you could check out the rest of it here. Any case, after the customization, we'll get into a short showcase as well as do our final review slash brief comparison of the modern and the Veto Classic.
Think long and hard. Life is hard when you can have anything. Making decisions is stressful. If you can think it, I can do it. Do you need a drink? Bubbles or something? No rush at all. Whatever you desire. Technology and budget permitting. How many cars you got in this garage again? Think long and hard. Life is hard when you can have anything. Making decisions is stressful. If you can think it, I can do it. The cops stop you? Don't tell them I installed that.
So let's go ahead and do a brief comparison between the Dinka Veto Modern and Dinka Veto Classic. So I'm really not going to do a final test drive. I'm going to sort of include that in this comparison here, but I just want to give you guys a little bit of a side-by-side view here in my garage. And really the most noticeable difference between these two vehicles is that the Modern has, a much wider build frame than the Veto Classic. That is really, I would say, the biggest and most noticeable difference between these two vehicles, and that's really about it as far as the appearance is concerned. As I stated before, customization is almost identical. There's like two main differences between them, and just the physical appearance looks a bit different. I believe even the wheels on the vehicle are like pretty much the same. The motor as well. I believe really all that's the same. The steering wheel. It's just the frame of the vehicle is really the main difference there. However, there are some other differences that can be derived, I guess you could say, or that can be discovered between these two vehicles, and that's what we're going to go ahead and talk about here next. So let's go ahead and start with the stats for these two vehicles. So we can see we have the Modern on the left, the Classic on the right. And really, if you look at this, if you compare the stats here, everything on the Modern is slightly increased when compared to the Classic. The only thing that's really hard to tell here is the acceleration might be the same on the Modern and the Classic, might be the same between two vehicles, but everything else, the other three stats, the top speed, the braking, as well as the traction, are slightly increased on the Modern than they are on the Classic. And I don't think that should come as really any surprise, just because you're paying $100,000 more for the Modern than you are for the Classic. I believe even like the first original open wheel vehicles that were added, there was sort of that like same sort of type of deal that you had there. But I don't think this is, it's not too bad. Obviously, we're getting a little bit of the performance of these two vehicles very shortly here, but I still think that races, if Rockstar were to add races in, I still think these would be somewhat still competitive with each other. I don't think that one would overly dominate the other one, but again, you sort of are getting what you're paying for here. I don't want to say that for sure. I mean, you are there clearly there's increased stats, and I would say probably obviously performance on the Modern, but I still think they'd be somewhat competitive against each other. But again, you are sort of getting what you're paying for with the Modern, because you are paying $100,000 more for the Modern than you are for the Classic. So I guess it really shouldn't come as any surprise you're getting slightly increased stats there. Now moving on to the performance. between these two vehicles. And this sort of goes also under the final review of the modern. But you see we have the modern on the left, we have the classic on the right. We're going to be going around the same turn here coming up. What you'll notice is that the turning for the classic seems to be, or the power steering seems to be a lot more loose than the turning for the moderate. And I know that's not necessarily as easy for you guys to see, or not really see, but rather experience this unless you were driving it yourselves. But I can tell you that the power steering is a lot more stiff for the modern than it is for the classic. It's a lot harder to make sharp turns with the modern than it is with the classic. However, I would say that you're more prone to lose control with the classic than you are with the modern. So that's also something you should keep in mind there. That you seem to even though the classic has a little bit lighter or less stiff power steering, it also seems to wipe out a little bit more than the modern. But that's really all I'll mention as far as performance is concerned. Everything else is going to be, again, slightly increased on the modern, at least in comparison between the modern and the classic. But yeah, that was probably the most noticeable difference that I was able to discover between these two vehicles. Another very small but awesome difference in detail between the modern and the classic, which we have the modern on the left here, the classic on the right, is you'll notice that their icons are actually different, which is a really, really cool detail on Rockstar's end. So I really enjoy they actually decided to make the icons different. I'm sure a lot of players probably would have missed this, but it's definitely a really cool detail nonetheless. Something else is very cool that I mentioned here is that I was able to pick up the modern with a cargo bob. In fact, if you look here, it doesn't even look like it's connected to the cargo bob. It almost looks like it's connected to something invisible. But nonetheless, I was able to pick up the modern with the cargo bob. And this is probably also a difference between the modern and the classic. As I mentioned in my review the other day with the Dinka Veto Classic, I was unsuccessful to be able to pick it up with the cargo bob. In fact, after being able to pick up the modern with the cargo bob, I went back and tried again with the classic, and there was a few times where I thought it was going to pick it up, but I was still unsuccessful. So at this point, it appears that you cannot pick up the classic, but you can pick up the modern. So that is definitely very interesting, and I was, a difference between the modern and the classic also. Something else I was able to find out quite interesting between the Veto Classic and the modern is there's a little bit of insurance difference between the two. It's actually a little bit more expensive to reclaim the modern than it is the classic. There is a $1,250 difference, probably just because the modern is a little bit more expensive than the classic, but nonetheless another difference between the modern and the classic.
I'll do my best.
And the last thing I'll mention here specifically regarding the modern is that you can use weapons in the Dinka Veto modern just like you can in the Dinka Veto Classic, so that really shouldn't come as any surprise. But in any case, guys, that's pretty much everything I had to present to you in this video. I hope you found it extremely beneficial. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video. Be sure to comment if you have any questions. And as always, have a great day.